Welcome, listener, to Bite-Sized Tales, the audio flash fiction podcast. In this week's tale, a happy-go-lucky superhero starts to question his impact. Not Enough, written and read by Wayne Cole. Ricochet, bouncing here and there and everywhere. I am the Ricochet. As I bounced around the city on patrol, I hit the button on my communicator to call the man who was my friend, tech support, and president of the Ricochet fan club. Lester, how do I have the theme for Gummy Bear stuck in my head when I've never even seen the show? Oh, sorry about that. Might be my fault. You know how you passed out on the couch last night holding your half-eaten burrito against your chest? Not sure how the burrito part's worth mentioning, but yeah. Oh, it's not. I just thought it was adorable. I took pictures of it if you want to see. I can text them to you. I landed on a roof and walked over to the ledge, surveying the town below. Things had been strangely quiet on patrol lately, and I was starting to get stir-crazy, waiting for something to happen. I think I'll pass. Please don't upload those to the website. Could you please get back to why I have the theme for a cartoon I have never seen in my head? Oh, yeah, right. Sorry. I watched a marathon while you were sleeping. You might have heard it in your sleep. I looked down and saw 3 armed men in some sort of high-tech armor hop out of a van and rush the front door of C&D Laboratories. The van seemed to let out a sigh and lifted a bit when they jumped out, so I had to assume the armor was pretty heavy. Their guns looked to be some sort of lasers. I heard Lester's voice in my head correcting me that they would be particle rifles, and the laser is just for aiming. We have had that conversation enough times that I think it was finally starting to sink in. Thinking about Lester, I pulled out my phone and took some quick pictures of the trio as they entered the building. I'm sending you some pics. Do these guys look familiar? I'd really like to know who I'm about to be punching. With that, I leapt from the building doing a somersault and landed perfectly, if I do say so myself. And I do, since I'm telling the story, in front of the lab. Sorry, Rick, I ran the pictures through the computer and there's no hits. They must be new. Well then, I guess it's time to meet the neighbors. Ricochet out. I hit the button to turn off the communicator. I needed to focus, and that was hard enough as it is. See, when I use my powers, they do something to me. Kind of like the ultimate sugar rush, I get hyper and scatterbrained. In some ways, it's kind of like I'm drunk. Lately, I've been trying to remind myself to think things through before acting because I've jumped in one too many times and made a mess of things. Sometimes it feels like all I can do is make a mess of things. It had been 2 weeks since I had hit anyone, though, and I needed some action. With all that in my mind, I yanked open the door and said, "Hey, honey, I'm home. What's for dinner?" Then I dove out of the way as 3 particle rifles turned towards me and destroyed the front door. I glanced outside and saw their getaway van explode as the blast hit it. If anyone asked, I totally did that on purpose, and it wasn't in any way a happy accident. You just made a big mistake, hero. I bounced around the lobby dodging the blast as they pretty much destroyed everything. You know, that really isn't surprising. I kind of make a lot of mistakes. But at least I look good doing it. I mean, come on, Gray. Couldn't you even spray paint your armor? A little splash of color or a logo or something? I dove towards the guy that seemed to be their leader and hit him in the chest with both feet, sending him flying across the lobby. Jumping around wasn't just a way to dodge the guns and annoy them. The more kinetic energy I absorb, the stronger I get. Bouncing helps me do that. Getting hit really hard does it much faster, but isn't nearly as much fun. Plus, these guys were using guns that don't really generate kinetic energy. I did a backflip and landed between the other 2, immediately dropping to the ground under their blasts. As I expected, they shot each other trying to hit me and went flying backwards. I was relieved to see that their armor seemed to have taken the blast. I picked up one of the guns and snapped it over my knee. The releasing energy tossed me through the air, spinning until I slammed into the wall, leaving a ricochet-shaped dent in it. Pulling myself up, I let out a groan of pain, but on the positive side, I absorbed a ton of kinetic energy from the impact. Glancing over at the scared receptionist hiding behind her desk, I said, I meant to do that. She shook her head, and I knew I was not filling her with confidence. Before I could reply, the guy that I had kicked wrapped both arms around me from behind and started to squeeze. If he had done this moments earlier, he might have broken my ribs, but I was stronger after the explosion, and my arms were pushing back, giving me a bit of breathing room. I couldn't quite break the grip, though. Really, the hug is sweet, but I just don't feel the same way about you. I pulled my head forward and then slammed it back against him. The pain from hitting his helmet was intense, but it was also more kinetic energy, and I felt the rush deaden the pain. More than once, I've been surprised by how hurt I am after a fight, because with the adrenaline flowing, I don't feel the pain. The headbutt didn't do any damage to him, but it did catch him off guard enough for me to slip free. I dropped to the ground and kicked out, sweeping his legs out from under him. The linoleum floor cracked under the impact of his fall. I moved, not giving him a moment to regroup, and pulled off his helmet. My fist stopped an inch from the teenage face in front of me. I have punched plenty of teenage gangbangers in my time, but I always feel horrible doing it. Instead, I reached down and pulled what I assumed was the power pack off of his armor. Since he stopped struggling, I assume I was correct. I could hear the sirens approaching, so it was time to head out. I found myself conflicted. On one hand, I got to fight and was riding the high that my powers provided. On the other hand, I had to fight teenagers again. Someone needed to reach out and help these kids before they become cannon fodder for villains. That isn't really something I'm qualified for, though. I'm just the guy that punches the bad guys. Most days, that's enough. As I leapt onto the roof across the street, I had to admit to myself that today was not one of those days. And now a word from our author. Ricochet started out as a character that I played in the actual play Knights of Rainsborough. The character has grown into so much more for me since then. It was his origin story that let me finally complete NaNoWriMo for the very first time. I have commissioned artwork and even a custom-made action figure of him. I always knew that when we started Bite-Sized Tales, I would introduce him to this audience as well. He can be funny and quirky as his powers cause an intoxicating effect on him. There is a real depth to the character though, and I hope over time to make you love him as much as I do. This chapter of Bite-Sized Tales has been brought to you under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives, 4.0 International License. Intro and outro music is Fantasy Motion by Alexander Nakarada, provided under a Creative Commons 4.0 license. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we would greatly appreciate reviews and recommendations to your friends. Finally, for more information about our authors, please visit bitesizedtales.com. We look forward to reading to you next time.